Hello, I am Paul Harris, America's editor at Mining Journal, and today I'm talking with Daniel Earle, President and CEO of Solaris Resources, one of the hottest new copper IPOs in the past year. Good afternoon, Daniel.
Afternoon, pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Solaris is a copper exploration company focused on South America, and it's a relatively new company given that it went public in July 2020. And you have a very special land package, one that was put together by the legendary copper porphyry exploration geologist David Lowell. Let's start there. How did Solaris come about, and how did Solaris obtain this David Lowell land package?
Absolutely. So Solaris is a copper, gold growth and discovery story, and it was spun out of Equinox Gold in 2018. Equinox, of course, is consumed with their mission of becoming the leading mid-tier gold producer. So they're going from just in the last year, over 600,000 ounces of production to over 1 million ounces in the next couple of years. And with Solaris, what they did is partner with the Augusta Group to surface the value in this portfolio of copper exploration assets that they'd accumulated through their corporate history. And Augusta really was the perfect partner for them because of its unrivaled track record of value creation, specifically in this niche of exploration and development in the mining sector. So this totals over $4.5 billion of exit transactions in the last decade, and a further $4 billion of value creation through investments that it's made. And so these companies that form that track record would be Ventana Gold, which made an incredible gold discovery in northern Colombia and sold that for $1.6 billion in 2011. Augusta Resource Corp, a discovery in Arizona, a copper porphyry, sold for nearly $700 million in 2014. Co-founding Equinox Gold itself, which is over a $3 billion market cap now in 2017. And then most recently selling Arizona Mining for $2.1 billion in 2018. Now this portfolio, the flagship asset here is called Warintza. This is located in Ecuador. It was a world-class discovery that had been made by David Lowell in the early 2000s. And it basically sat dormant until our company came in and repaired the social license for the project in the context of a vastly improved political climate in Ecuador with respect to the mining industry, with the opening up of that sector beginning in 2014, and then really accelerating with the good work that Lundin Gold did, a strategic supporter of ours in Lundin, with their Fruta del Norte project, which is a neighbor of ours to the south. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking the discovery that David Lowell had made, and then we're drilling out the resource that he had got started in the Warintza Central Zone. And then moving on, we've just today announced our second discovery, or the second discovery on the Warintza property package at Warintza West. So we'll be drilling that out now. And then we've released some very exciting geophysics that give the first picture of the full scale of this Warintza cluster of porphyries. And we'll have drilling into the other targets that have been identified in that geophysical survey. Warintza East and one of the larger anomalies at Warintza South, all in the first half of this year. And that'll give a really complete picture, I think, of the potential of this system with that drilling. But then even beyond Warintza, you've got a pipeline of grassroots exploration projects that David put together. These were really David's targets for his next string of discoveries beyond Warintza. And we're certainly looking forward to getting in and testing some of those targets once the COVID situation improves and allows in Chile and also in Peru.
Thank you. The main target, as you mentioned, the initial target that you've been drilling as Solaris is the Warintza Central target. Your initial drilling there, you had several intercepts of up to 1 kilometer long, grading almost 1% copper equivalent. Those kind of results were what the market was expecting. It propelled your stock up over 300% last year to a market cap of now over $600 million Canadian. So successful proof of concept there. How are you looking to grow that or expand on that success at Warintza Central? What's the plan to define a bigger resource there?
Yeah, well, absolutely. The plan, we're right now in the drilling stage. So up until the end of the year, we'd completed about 14 kilometers of drilling, and then the total budget to drill off Warintza Central is 40 kilometers. So we've now got 6 rigs. We've been expanding our program. And just today we announced we're going to expand it again to 12 rigs. But even with 6 rigs that we have currently, we can complete over 20 kilometers of drilling per quarter. And so if you just do the math on that, we're going to be complete drilling the volume that we've defined at Warintza Central early in the second quarter. And that volume is roughly 1,100 meters down to a kilometer depth with approximately 400, 450 meters of width. So that's a volume of about 1.4 billion tons that we're going to have completely drilled off early in the second quarter. And that would be obviously a natural point to cut off the drilling for a resource estimate. But that's really the beginning of the story of Warintza. And that becomes clear in the geophysics that we released today. We've got a 3D model that investors can look at on our website, solarisresources.com, where you can manipulate the geophysics and overlay the drilling and spin it around in 3 dimensions and really come to terms with the scale of the system that we have here. So for example, Warintza Central, it becomes evident, is just the central piece of a much larger anomaly that goes from Warintza West 3.5 kilometers to Warintza East, with Warintza Central in the middle. And that's about 1 kilometer of width, and it extends to about 1 kilometer of depth. So that's obviously a very large volume, and it's going to require a considerably larger drilling program. And that's one of the reasons why we announced this expansion to 12 rigs. The other reasons are Warintza South. Now, this is a zone that we'd identified through surface geochemistry as rather a large zone, similar dimensions to Warintza Central. But it now becomes clear in the geophysics that there's a much, much larger target there. And so the geophysical anomaly that corresponds to Warintza South is nearly 2.5 kilometers in strike length by over 1 kilometer in width and nearly 1 kilometer in depth. And so that's a target that we're going to be very excited to drill here in the first half, in addition to more drilling at West and the first ever drill testing at Central, at East, and more drilling as we continue to drill out the resource volume that we're targeting for Warintza Central.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Now, 1.4 billion tons at Warintza Central, and within a porphyry cluster of 5 by 5 kilometer district. Porphyries tend to sort of cluster. So how does the potential of Warintza compare to other well-known porphyry districts around the world? Is it shaping up to be a world-class district? Is it going to get to that, or could it get to that scale?
Yeah, I think if you look at the footprint of what we've defined, even just in the geophysics, in the geochemistry, let alone the geophysics, which imply, a much larger system. But even just in the geochemistry, basically the surface sampling, you can see that we've got a footprint that's comparable to other world-class porphyry districts available globally. So even in Ecuador, if you look at SolGold, which has one of the largest independently held porphyry systems with their Cascabel project, it's got roughly a 5 kilometer strike length to it, which is similar to what we have from Warintza West through to Warintza East, encompassing Warintza Central. And then, of course, we've got now Warintza South, about 4 kilometers to the south, and this newly identified target, Yowie, which has several kilometers of strike length on its own. So certainly there's a world-class footprint there. And it's just a matter of getting in to drill it, which we're going to do as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, you mentioned Cascabel, and if I remember correctly, Cascabel, the mineralization, they started intercepting that at 800 meters depth, 1 kilometer depth, whereas at Warintza, you pretty much from surface straight into mineralization. What are the potential implications for that if one's looking ahead to a future mine development, or is that a bit too preliminary to sort of think about?
Yeah, I think at Alpala, some of the lower grade mineralization comes closer to surface. Their high grade zone starts at about 600 meters depth. And so their economics are based on, and engineering studies are based on, that zone being mined by block caving. And there's a thought with further exploration potential, they may be able to identify an open pit, which would certainly facilitate that project getting into production with lower upfront capital costs and allowing for some cash flow to fund basically the larger development of this underground block cave. So that's essentially their situation and ambition. With our project, you have the high grade starting right from surface. So most of our intervals are starting at 1 meter depth, with the highest grades at the top of the intervals and extending down to 1 kilometer of depth. All of that mineralization right down to 1 kilometer would fit into an open pit domain. And then obviously that has important advantages in terms of lower upfront capital costs, more rapid payback because you're straight into high grade mineralization, and just improved economics overall.
And a shorter construction time potentially, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Even large scale open pit projects, you're talking about less than a 3-year construction timeline. Whereas for a block cave, you're looking at 5 years plus, potentially plus for some of the truly large scale developments like Oyu Tolgoi. Oyu Tolgoi, for example, and this started with a much smaller open pit mining operation in 2014, is not expected to be fully ramped up until 2024. And that timeline, in fact, has been creeping out as they've gotten further into that development and realized some of the challenges that they're facing with that underground mega project that they're building out with the block cave. So in any case, you've got over a decade of construction to fully deliver one of those underground projects. Increasingly, that's been seen as the future of the copper industry because the large high-grade open pit opportunities have all been developed in the prior cycle, if not in the cycle before that one. But here with something like Warintza, it's what's so unique about this is you're basically teleporting back into a prior period in copper exploration because of the history of this asset being held in limbo with the socio-political framework, in Ecuador and the social issues with this project in specific. Which we came in and restored the social license for to actually kickstart our activities on the project in 2019.
Okay. In December last year, the company raised over 80 million Canadian dollars in a private placement. And you mentioned earlier that you're going to be expanding from 6 to 12 rigs. So obviously the aim is to be more aggressive with the drilling. You said you were drilling sort of 20,000 a month, 20,000 meters a month at Warintza Central. So with the 12 rigs, with the extra funding, what are you looking at drilling for this year, and what are the goals now for this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So the treasury is about a little over $90 million Canadian, so about $70 million US or a bit more. And then at the current pace of drilling, which is with 6 rigs, we're doing a little over 20 kilometers of drilling per quarter. And that would translate at our drilling costs, which all in, inclusive of mobilization, demobilization, assays, and all the rest of it, work out to a little bit less than $300 a meter. So you're talking about a burn rate of about $6.5 million per quarter. But then obviously we've announced that we're going to be doubling our drill program. So we're going to 12 rigs, and we'll actually achieve that kind of a ramp up around the middle of the year, possibly early in the summer. And then the spending and burn rate will increase commensurate with that ramp up in the drilling, which is the primary expense here. Everything else pales in comparison to the cost of the drilling itself. So by then, at a full run rate, you'll be talking about something in and around $12 million per quarter.
Okay, excellent. You also mentioned at the top, the company has projects in Peru and Chile, and you're potentially looking at reactivating those now that the COVID-19 restrictions are starting to ease. What's the plan for those countries?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're really excited in particular about our Tamarugo project in Chile. And this is a project that, had it not been for the onset of the COVID pandemic in Chile, which was particularly acute in the mining in the copper districts in the Atacama of Chile, we actually would have begun drilling on this project in April of last year. And so it's been a long time coming. Fortunately, the situation's improving, and we're hopeful that we'll get in and be able to drill test this really exciting project early in the second quarter of this year. But that's still dependent, obviously, on getting safety clearance, because we're not about to move forward in a haphazard fashion there.
Oh,
So that's one project. That'll be the first in line. With respect to the projects in Peru, we have two projects, Capricho, which is right in the heart of the southern Peru copper belt. Very exciting project with outcropping copper porphyry mineralization, well mineralized right at surface and totally undrilled. We're engaged in social work there at the moment. And when we've established social license and completed our consultation work and so on, then we'll move to drill that as quickly as we possibly can. So we're hopeful that we get in there by the end of the year. And then Paco Orco, a polymetallic system also in Peru, similar sort of status and timeline with that project. And in the meantime, we have our joint venture partner, Freeport-McMoRan. They've got a very aggressive drill program targeting the extension or similar types of occurrences as Chuquicamata in the land package that sits contiguous to the south of Chuquicamata, which is one of the world's great copper deposits and mines.
well, it sounds like Solaris Resources is going to have a lot of news coming out throughout this year. I look forward to catching up with you again to talk about that as and when the news comes out. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. So I'd like to thank Daniel Earle for Solaris Resources for joining us today. And goodbye from me, Paul Harris, and stay tuned for more from Mining Journal.
Thanks so much, Paul.